Ferrari looked fast enough to fight for the podium in Hungary. Lewis Hamilton had qualified second. Charles Leclerc was still within reach of the top three. The car finally seemed ready. Then everything started to fall apart. A three-place penalty dropped Hamilton to fifth. Traffic destroyed his freedom. Strategy became reactive. And McLaren controlled the moments Ferrari could not. By the finish, Leclerc was fourth, Hamilton was fifth, and the real disaster was no longer hidden. Ferrari did not fail because the car was slow. They failed because the speed was there, the opportunity was real, and somehow they still let it escape. But Hamilton's most painful discovery came from understanding exactly where the race had already been lost. Subscribe to the channel. Editor. To understand where Ferrari's race truly began to collapse, we have to return to Friday, when the team appeared to have found exactly what it needed. Lewis Hamilton finished first in the second practice session. Charles Leclerc finished second. A Ferrari won too, at one of the most difficult circuits on the calendar. And this was not just a strong practice result. The Hungaroring is narrow, technical, and extremely difficult to overtake on. One corner flows directly into the next. A small mistake can damage an entire section of the lap. There is almost no time to recover. That makes confidence incredibly important. If the front of the car does not respond, the driver hesitates. If the rear feels unstable, the driver cannot apply the power with confidence. If the tires overheat, the pace can disappear before the driver has any chance to react. But on Friday, Ferrari looked calm. The car appeared balanced through the slow and medium speed corners. Hamilton and Leclerc could push without constantly fighting the steering wheel. For once, Ferrari did not look like a team searching for performance. It looked like a team that had already found it. The high downforce package appeared to suit Budapest. In simple terms, the car seemed capable of creating the grip needed to remain stable through the circuit's long sequence of corners. Think of trying to run across a wet floor. You may have all the strength in the world, but without grip, that strength becomes useless. Ferrari finally looked connected to the track. The front turned when the drivers asked it to turn. The rear remained calmer when they applied the power. And that stability created something every driver needs. Trust. Trust allows a driver to brake later. Trust allows a driver to carry more speed. Trust allows a driver to attack instead of waiting for the car to make a mistake. Hamilton had that trust. Leclerc had it too. And when both drivers feel confident at the same time, the team begins to believe the performance is real. Suddenly, Ferrari was not only thinking about points. A front row start looked possible. A podium looked realistic. And if everything worked perfectly, even a fight at the very front no longer seemed impossible. But Fred Vasseur remained cautious. He recognized that the balance looked good, yet he also warned that Friday would not decide the weekend. Saturday would matter more. Sunday would matter most. At the time, those words sounded careful. By the end of the weekend, they sounded like a warning Ferrari had failed to escape. Because practice never shows the full picture. Teams can run different fuel loads. Engine settings may differ. Traffic can destroy one driver's lap and make another driver appear stronger. A red flag can interrupt the longer runs before anyone fully understands the true race pace. Ferrari had seen enough to feel confident, but it had not seen enough to feel safe. And that difference would become critical. A car can be exceptional for one lap when the tires are fresh and the fuel load is lighter. Then the race begins. The fuel changes the balance. The tires begin to heat. The grip starts moving away from the driver. The same car that felt sharp on Saturday can become much more difficult on Sunday. It is the difference between sprinting across a room and running several miles. The first challenge is about speed. The second is about control. Ferrari knew it had speed. What it still needed to prove was whether it could control the entire weekend. That made qualifying even more important. At the Hungaroring, starting near the front gives a driver something more valuable than clean air. It gives control. There are fewer cars ahead. There is less danger of becoming trapped in traffic. The team can choose its own strategy instead of reacting to everyone else. And Hamilton appeared to have secured exactly that advantage. He qualified second. For a brief moment, Ferrari had everything it had been building toward. A fast car, a confident driver, a front row starting position, a realistic path toward the podium. Then the stewards became involved. Hamilton was judged to have unnecessarily impeded Oscar Piastri during the final part of qualifying. The punishment was 3 grid positions. Second became 5th. At another circuit, that might have been manageable. In Hungary, it changed the entire race. Hamilton did not only lose 3 places. He lost clean air. He lost strategic freedom. He lost the ability to attack from the front row. And most importantly, he lost control. Every car ahead became another obstacle. Another driver could slow him through the corners. Another team could stop early and force Ferrari to react. Another battle could overheat the tires. Another lap in traffic could erase the advantage Ferrari had worked all weekend to create. The penalty did not make the Ferrari slower. It made the speed much harder to use. That was the cruel part. Ferrari had finally found a package that appeared capable of fighting near the front. Hamilton had delivered the qualifying position. The opportunity was already there. And before the race had even started, that opportunity had been pushed onto a much more dangerous path. But the penalty was only the first sign of what was coming. Because once Hamilton started fifth, the weekend stopped being about pure pace. It became a battle against traffic, tire temperature, and strategic pressure. And that was when Hamilton began to discover the real scale of Ferrari's problem. Eddie Tarr. Starting fifth did not only change Hamilton's position, it changed the kind of race Ferrari was forced to run. From second, Hamilton could have attacked immediately. He could have used clean air, protected the tires, and made the cars behind react to Ferrari. From fifth, the situation was reversed. And when both cars need different things, every decision becomes more complicated. A pit stop for one driver can affect the other. A defensive call can reduce attacking options. A delayed stop can protect one position while exposing the second car to traffic. Ferrari had two competitive cars, but did not have one simple race. It had two battles connected by tire life, traffic, and McLaren's decisions. That gave McLaren something more valuable than a small pace advantage. It gave McLaren control. The cars ahead could manage their tires. They could watch Ferrari's pit stops. They could react instead of gamble. Ferrari had to make the first uncertain move. That sounds like a small disadvantage. It was not. Imagine playing a card game when your opponent gets to see your decision before making their own. You may hold strong cards. You may understand the game. But every move gives the other side more information. Ferrari had the speed. McLaren had the position. And position created options. The longer the race continued, the more valuable those options became. Hamilton could push, but pushing in traffic carried a cost. The tires worked harder. The car became less stable. The chance of a clean attack became smaller. Leclerc could remain close to the podium, but simply remaining close was not enough. Ferrari needed a moment that changed the order. A perfectly timed stop. A clear gap in traffic. A mistake from a rival. Something had to open the race. It never opened enough. And that is where the frustration began to grow. Hamilton knew the car was not slow. He had felt the pace on Friday. He had delivered second place in qualifying before the penalty. He knew what Ferrari could do when the conditions were right. But Sunday was no longer giving him those conditions. The pace was still inside the car. The race was preventing him from using it. That is one of the hardest situations for a driver to accept. When the car is clearly weak, the explanation is simple. The team needs more performance. When the car is competitive, every lost opportunity feels avoidable. Could the traffic have been escaped earlier? Could the strategy have created more space? Could the timing have been different? Could Ferrari have reacted faster? Each question creates another one, and every answer points back to the same uncomfortable truth. Ferrari had arrived in Hungary with enough pace to fight for more than fourth and fifth. But the team never recovered the control it had lost before the race began. Leclerc eventually finished fourth. Hamilton finished fifth. Those positions looked respectable. They did not reflect the full opportunity. That was what made the results so painful. Ferrari had not watched the podium disappear from a distance. It had been close enough to believe it belonged there. The difference was not a huge lack of speed. It was the ability to execute when the race became complicated. McLaren handled those moments more effectively. Ferrari did not. And this is where the weekend became bigger than one penalty. Formula One is not won by speed alone. It is won by combining speed with timing, communication, tire management, and track position. One weakness can damage everything around it. A lower starting position creates traffic. Traffic increases tire stress. Tire stress limits strategy. Limited strategy gives the rival more control. And more control allows the rival to protect the result. Nothing happened alone. Every problem fed the next one. By the time Ferrari needed a final response, the race had already been shaped by everything that came before. That is why Hamilton's frustration after the race carried so much weight. He was not leaving Hungary after a weekend without hope. He was leaving after a weekend where hope had been real. The car had worked. The pace had appeared. The front row had been there. Then the opportunity disappeared in stages. First came the penalty, then came the traffic, then came the loss of strategic freedom, then came the growing advantage for the cars already ahead. No single moment looked large enough to explain everything. Together, they decided the race. That is how some of the most painful defeats happen. Not with smoke, not with a broken engine, not with one dramatic collapse. They happen quietly. A position lost here, a lap delayed there, a tire pushed slightly too hard, a rival reacting a little faster. By the time the result appears, the race has already been lost in pieces. Ferrari did not suddenly become slow. Ferrari slowly became trapped. And once that happened, the speed that had looked so powerful on Friday could no longer rescue Sunday. But the deeper warning was still ahead, because Hungary may have shown real progress in the car. It may also have shown how easily that progress can be wasted when Ferrari fails to control the moments that matter most.